Welcome to our third episode of WrenchWay Weekly, the show where we talk about hot industry topics. We highlight the voice of the technicians that are out there and educate shops and dealerships on how to help improve the industry. And we really do it by kind of tying a whole bunch of this feedback together. This week's topic of conversation was kind of an interesting one in that it was a broad question that really generated a lot of interesting response. There was a lot of response, once again, similar to week two, where with the question on warranty rates really kind of engaged a lot of folks. And so this week's question kind of did the same thing, but for a different reason. It was a really vague question. And we did that kind of on purpose just to see what we could get for responses. And that really drove a lot of mixed reaction across the board. But the question for this week is, as a technician, do you feel like your voice is being heard by management? And we put a LinkedIn poll out there. There was 140 total votes. About 3,000 people viewed the poll. 75% said no. So 75% of technicians said that they didn't feel like their voice was being heard by management. The other 25% were yeses. Now, obviously not everybody that answered the poll was a technician. In fact, about 58% of the no vote, that they didn't feel they were being treated right by technicians, were the actual technicians, right? So there was a 42% that weren't actually technicians. Same with the yes vote, that they felt like their voices were being heard by management. About 37% of those were techs. So you can kind of get an idea of what the technician response was based on kind of that data. Now, we did pose the question to our WrenchWay Insiders, and as we kind of get that WrenchWay Insiders program more popular, there's going to be a lot more of an elaborate response to that, and that's kind of what we saw this week. So we actually added another part to the question when we posed it to our WrenchWay Insiders, and that was for the management side, right? So we kind of got both pieces of the puzzle here, and the second part of that question was, as management, do you take the feedback you get from technicians and put it into action? And so as I'm reading through the responses of everybody that responded through the WrenchWay Insiders program, the technician side, the management side, there was kind of mixed responses on both, right? So not every technician answered the same way. Not every manager answered the same way, right? Technicians, I think, for the most part, kind of felt like their voices were heard, or maybe more so that they were being listened to, but not really heard, right? So maybe they've got suggestions on something that could help a service process, and they feel like they've brought that to the attention of management, and then that's not been executed on. Conversely, on the other side of that, with the managers, they're saying, hey, you know what? We hear them, we listen and hear them when they're talking. It's just that we can't put every suggestion into action. So if it's something about a tool that we definitely need, that's probably more of a pressing item that they can take care of pretty quickly and get that nice specialized tool for a technician to be able to do their job. But when it comes to general management and maybe a personnel decision, they need to think through that a little bit more. And I knew that from my personal experience too in the business, is that I would have technicians come up and say, hey, you know what, it would really, really be useful to have this particular tool. And after doing a little bit of research, we're like, yeah, you know what, we definitely need this tool. I'd also have technicians come into my office and say, you know what, you need to fire Jimmy tomorrow. And you can't do that, right? So for a technician to learn this piece of it, this is a big piece that I kind of got out of all of the information that we got back for responses, was one, a technician needs to know how to approach management and do it in a good way, right? You can't come in guns a-blazing, screaming at the manager that you want Jimmy fired, or you want that tool, or really that aggressive state, because it's not going to get anything done. I think whenever you put a manager in a defensive state, you put yourself at less likelihood that you're going to be able to actually get what you want accomplished by giving that suggestion. So my first tip, I guess, today, based on the data that we saw and the responses, is really one, as technicians, I think we can learn to communicate a little bit better with management. Of course, if you communicate well and you do everything through the proper channels and nothing gets done, that leads to even more frustration. So I totally get that part, and we'll talk about that with the management side. But first and foremost, from a technician's standpoint, you need to approach that feedback loop in a really, really professional manner. And that's something I feel like does lack. I think we've got to get better at that. And how do you do that? We can create some content. If you've got any questions about that piece, or you've got a pressing issue right now within your shop, feel free to email me. My email address is jay@findarewrench.com, jay@findarewrench.com, and ask me about that pressing issue. I'd be glad to walk you through it and maybe give you my perspective on it. From the manager's take, in what I saw there, and kind of matching that up to what the technician said, was even if you're listening and you're hearing what they're saying, but you don't put that into action one way or the other, whether that's giving them feedback or that is really actually doing something to make a difference, and especially if it's something that's a trend amongst everybody in the shop, you might want to really take a look at that. But say if it's something where a tech brings a possible solution to you, and in the back of your mind as a manager, you're saying, okay, I'd love to do it, I just can't, whether it's because of resources, because it's of maybe there's other factors at play, right? Something with ownership or something with other managers, whatever it is. It's important to really think about the reason why you can't execute that, and then communicate that back to the technician. I think that might be a lot of times where the whole loop, the communication loop, really starts to fail. Is a tech comes in, and this is my personal experience, and I've seen this break down because of it. But the ultimate bad scenario is a tech comes in, guns a-blazing, we need to change this, blah, 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 like going crazy. And immediately as a manager, your mind kind of shuts down a little bit and you start taking them less seriously. So to make that situation go away, the manager sits and listens and says, yeah, you know what, that is a bad situation. That's a bad, we need to change it. And then the tech leaves and the manager's happy because that conversation is over a lot of times. But then nothing actually gets executed on, right? So because he feels like maybe, or he or she, the manager, may feel like, hey, you know what, I put this one to bed. I don't need to deal with this anymore. But that's where that next step is so important. If you're not going to execute on something, you need to tell the technician why. And I feel like this is a good opportunity to be candid with them, right? Really kind of, this is a good way to gain their trust. Really sit down and talk with them as to what your decision-making process is. Make sure you've got a decision-making process and it's not just a, shoot from the hip, which personally I was a little bit guilty of, still am, of managing through emotions. But if you can sit down and walk them through your thought process, it might help them understand for the next time. And maybe if they need to bring some data with them, or they need to bring some element of proof that, hey, changing this will help our shop out and help us become a better run shop, more profitable, and just in general a better experience for the customer, for the employees. As you walk them through the thought process, I think that can really, really help. And I think that's maybe when looking at all the comments that I saw come in from WrenchWay insiders, that was really, really interesting to me, was that piece right there. Was just, if you can execute on it, make sure you explain why. And then if you can, but it's going to be a while, make sure you explain that part. Hey, you know what, we've got a lot going on right now. I really liked your plan, but we need a little bit of time here to get it done. That won't appease everybody, but at least you're being honest and you're being upfront with them. And rather than just trying to push the conversation aside, you actually address the problem at hand. So that's just my take on that. I thought, my take was it was very similar to what I saw from comments, both the positive and negative comments from both sides. So I think we're getting to be on the same page with a lot of this stuff, and this is hopefully what this show will do is really bring visibility to what the other side thinks without being threatened, right? And without having it become a volatile conversation. So thank you to everybody for the feedback. That's my quick take on it. I'd love to elaborate with any of you. And if you want to give feedback like that, make sure you're getting on the WrenchWay Insiders program so we can really start to dive into this and bring good feedback. Next, I guess the next piece of the show is the weekly giveaway, right? Which I think is kind of cool. Last week we gave away a $50 Snap-on gift card, and this week we're actually going to give away a $50 Mac Tools gift card. So again, very relevant gifts to the technicians that are out there. For this week's question, with the "as a technician, do you feel like your voice is heard by management?" question, I really appreciate all the comments. There was so many comments that had really good thought put into them and constructive thought, and that's what we need in order to keep this show rolling and be able to keep bringing some feedback. And we'll elaborate more as we get into these shows. But just a reminder as to what WrenchWay Insiders is. It's a program that you sign up by going to WrenchWay.com. There's a resources tab on WrenchWay.com and then a WrenchWay Insiders tab where you can really easily sign up. And each week we're going to pose a question just like the one we did this week, where you're going to give your feedback. We're going to study the feedback, talk about it in the show, and then ultimately we'll build more content as we start to grow this thing. You can give feedback on LinkedIn. We're still going to continue to put the poll questions out on LinkedIn, but to be entered to win these weekly prizes, you do need to answer the questions on WrenchWay Insider, which I think is pretty cool. So for this week, as I mentioned, our giveaway is a $50 Mac Tools gift card. That was my favorite tool manufacturer growing up, and it was more because of the rep that came in, and I'll always remember that when I was a kid, and buying a Dale Earnhardt or Ernie Irvin Mac Tools hat. That was always a big thing for me. But this week's winner is Timothy Van Kempen. So Timothy, congratulations on the $50 gift card. Hopefully you can use that to upgrade your tool set a little bit. And as for next week, this is another kind of loaded question that our WrenchWay Insiders will see. So this question is, with the current state of the industry, do you plan on being a technician in 5 years from now? And so again, it's kind of a vague question, but I think we will draw some good responses from it. And really, we want insight as to, if things stay the way they are, what's the likelihood that you're going to stay in the industry? And we want your honest feedback, right? We want you to tell us what you think, right? If it's, unless this changes, I'm out, or I'm in for my life, I love this business. We want to know that, because I think that can help us fine tune some things and talk about it on this show. So hopefully we can get some good feedback from you. We'll be sending out a WrenchWay Insiders email this afternoon with that question and a link to the survey. So make sure you sign up for WrenchWay Insiders, and hopefully you'll win a cool prize as a result. So thanks again to everybody. Our third show here with WrenchWay Weekly. Would love to hear feedback on what you'd like to hear more of. Length of show. Do you want it longer? Do you want it shorter, more compressed? Do you want a combination of both? There's a few different options that we can really dive into, and I think based on what we've gotten for feedback so far, it does feel like there's a lot of really good, passionate people that want to participate in this, and hopefully work to bridge the gap between technicians and management to really make the lives of technicians better and make the industry better as a whole. So thanks again. Look forward to seeing everybody on our fourth week of WrenchWay Weekly and fourth episode. But keep the comments coming, keep the interaction coming. This is really, really cool for me to see, and hopefully we can continue to provide value with this platform. Take care. Have a good day.